Good morning, folks. We are here on WNN for this week's pre-debate show. I'm your host, Jaden Taylor. We've got a great matchup here between a couple different groups, a lot of back and forth that we've seen here in this election campaign. Of course, we had some really good campaigns last year. We're seeing a really good debate here tonight. Of course, we'll start off with our Democrats, then we'll go with our Republicans, and here tonight, or here this afternoon, we're going to have Luke Steiner, our Democratic analyst, as well as Will Christiansen, our Republican analyst. And Luke, talk about this field here for the Democrats.
Well, it looks like from our polls that we have a large amount of us are Democrats. 70% from the polls say that they are planning to vote Democrat. So really interested to see what each candidate will be doing to secure the votes of all these people that are planning to vote Democrats. To secure the candidacy.
So with Will, I mean, specifically looking at this group overall, you have three different candidates that you're going to be looking at. Min Win is definitely the favorite here in this one. How are you guys going to be able to get Republicans to the voting polls once we get to the main election?
You know, I think Min is sort of the standout candidate right now, but I think the slate in general is really great. We've got a lot of great candidates with Elizabeth Matz and Nick Ludinger. So I think they have a lot to offer and a lot of appeal for the voter pool. So I think they've got a good talent, and they'll be able to get the voters excited to come out and vote.
So looking here real quick at the list specifically of the Democratic candidates, of course, we've really seen a lot of a mix between Cade Preischer. Cade Preischer currently with 26% of our recent polls vote. After that, it's tied for second between both Jimmy Watkey Stacy as well as Chandler Meeks. They both have just over 20%. At fourth right now currently is Luca Lafata Hornios. Then at fifth is going to be Carter Hogan. At last, with just 3 votes on a recent poll, is Gabe Barros. So a lot of room to happen over with this upcoming debate. Remember from last year, Aiden Karpf started off that primary debate dead last with only 2 votes in their original poll, then went all the way back and was able to take home the White House. So there's a lot of room left to go here in this one. A lot of opportunities for both these candidates to show off who they are, show off what they're able to bring, and show off what they can do for this United States. So here, looking at the list of Republican candidates here for these two, we're going to see, originally we were going to see Thomas Pate here. He has not filed for candidacy. We're also going to see here tonight, or here this morning, excuse me, is going to be Min Win, Nick Ludinger, as well as Elizabeth Matz. A lot of 3 different groups that we're going to see with a little bit varying independence from back and forth. Our only independent vote currently is Carly Rizak. We will not see her this morning. We'll see her at most likely, if she still stays in this race, we will see her at the actual general election debate, which will be, I believe, 3 or 4 weeks here from today. You can guys watch that here on WNN. So real quick, we'll take a quick break here on WNN. We'll be right back for more of the pre-debate show. We'll talk with a little bit of our representatives and give you more insight on this election. the WNN Pre-Debate Show. First up, we're going to look at some of our upcoming dates here for this upcoming election here for the Westside AP Gov and regular Gov United States election. So looking at the upcoming dates, so of course, this upcoming on the 22nd, we're going to see our presidential primary debates, that will actually be the elections on that date, Then we'll see the National Party Convention on November 5th. Then the general election debates, you guys can watch that here on WNN as well. That'll be November 12th. Then our general election will be on November 16th. So a lot of big dates, a lot of caucuses coming up. The Iowa caucus is coming up here as well. A lot of groups that are looking to go out and be able to find votes. And there's a lot of competition back and forth. And these debates that we'll see here today will mean a lot. So first up, we're going to talk with Luke Steiner, the Democratic analyst, and a little bit with Samantha Manhart, who is our representative here today for the Jimmy Waukee-Stacy campaign. So Luke, take it over here.
All right. First for your candidate, what are Stacy's biggest things that he's looking to really promote and want people to know about him for this debate?
You know, we have a lot of things that we promote, but most importantly, I think that Jimmy runs an awesome campaign for the people and also for the environment. We want to keep people safe, and to him this means making sure that semi and automatic rifles are fully prohibited. We also believe in the precedent set by Roe v. Wade. We want to decriminalize and legalize marijuana. And then for the environment, we would like to create tax incentives for larger businesses that create new ways to, that invest their business in green solutions, and then put a carbon tax on businesses who pollute the environment.
Right now in the polls, it seems to be Preister and Stacy kind of head and head. Preister has a little bit of gain on you, just a 5% polling rate ahead of you. What's your plan for getting those votes and securing a spot ahead of Preister?
Well, first I want to say that we haven't had a lot of opportunities to host rallies or anything. We have a lot planned almost every state before the primary, so I think that's where we will begin catching up, and I'm really excited for that. I think that we will catch up.
Does your candidate have any specific strategies when it comes to today's debate, or is just gonna go with the flow of how it's going?
I think he's great at thinking on his feet. I'm sure he's got some bulleted notes to go off of too. He's very professional, and yeah, I think it'll just go well for him.
Okay, so a candidate who believes really fighting for the environment and is also quick on his feet. Not a huge plan for today, but we'll see how that works out for him.
It'll be good.
All right, so next up, we will bring in the Cade Preister campaign. This will be Jack Winfrey. A lot of information coming here for Cade Preister. We know some background information, a pretty funny ad we'll see here today on our debate show, as well as the debate here today. But Preister leading in the polls. We'll see if he can keep up this momentum.
All right, so first question I've got to ask is, how are you pulling ahead? How are you ahead of everyone right now? What's been your strategy for this campaign?
I think that Cade is just a really likable person. He's really social, he likes to talk to people, and I think that that's really pulling in a lot of voters. We've been pretty active on Twitter and social media, trying to just create like a likability for Cade Preister, and I would say that's really what's helping us pull ahead right now.
So does your candidate have any sort of specific strategy for today, or is he just trying to maintain the same momentum that he seemed to have? Because it's clear that there's a lot of support from him, both from the poll ratings and just in general. It seems like a lot of people are advocating. I think that he has the most vocal support. Does he have any strategies for making that, furthering that support, or is he just kind of gonna go like the Stacy campaign?
Right now we're really like foot on the gas. We're trying to pull ahead as fast as we can. Cade's going to be showing up today. He's going to be looking great. He's going to be speaking his mind. I think a lot of people are going to agree with what he says. We have a new advertisement that is going to be shown today, and I think that we're just really trying to, pull ahead as far as we can right now.
Okay, what do you think your candidate has struggled most with throughout this campaign, whether it's allocating funds or clearly he's not lacking for support, but is there anything that's been hard for his campaign to gain momentum?
I think right now our biggest issue is we've only had one rally so far, so I would say that that's probably our biggest issue right now. But we're already on top of things. Next week, I think we have 3 rallies planned already. We're going to be filming lots of ads this weekend for the upcoming week. So I think maybe just a kind of publicity for like advertisements, posters. We've been making posters and hanging them up. So I think we're really catching up with like all the advertisements, I guess I would say.
Okay, so a candidate who really cares about public appearance and making sure that his name is out there. It'll be interesting to see what the crowd support is for Preister today. And yeah.
All right, so next up here, we're going to look at a little bit more of the Republican side. Elizabeth Matz, currently in our recent poll, 7.1% of the vote. Of course, currently on our recent poll, only 15 different responses. We'll see what the Democrats can maybe push back and forth, or how can the Republicans be able to work something out here, and how can Elizabeth Matz get back in this race?
Well, first off, Elizabeth, thanks for coming on the show. This is super fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So what are your big 3 topics that you want to push during this debate?
My 3 main issues are limiting the government, abortion, and the Second Amendment. Basically, I really think it's important that we limit the government because I believe in a laissez-faire style government. Because if we have more of a hands-off government, we are allowing the economy to succeed. Basically, I think that if the wealthy pay more of their money towards the economy and less the taxes, then overall we will succeed as a country. I believe that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That is the Second Amendment, and this is true. But I do think we're going to need to compromise and ban certain weapons like the guns that shoot multiple shots at once. That is a compromise I'm willing to make that we can change to ban. And also for abortion, I think it's important that we make a compromise, but the law is never going to change at this point in time. I think what we have to do is just make a compromise, and that may have to be with the first trimester. I think it can be legal, and past that it can't, unless of course you're involved with rape, incest, or have dangerous outcomes for the pregnancy.
Great, yeah. So who do you think your biggest competition is? I know as Republicans we're sort of outnumbered in this setting, but I think what are some of your strategies towards flipping Democratic votes?
Yeah, so my biggest competition is probably men, because I think he is a very strong candidate and able to get people to understand his views, but I personally think I am the best candidate because I'm willing for compromise, and that is something that we need to realize that we need to unite as one is compromise.
Yeah. And then lastly, we'll hit on this one. So what are some of your strategies towards flipping maybe those more moderate Democratic votes if they're on the fence of like, I don't know if I like this candidate, but I'm open to listen to maybe a conservative voice.
Yeah.
Why should they listen to your voice?
Yeah, I definitely think they should listen to me because if they are on, like, not fully on a side, right or left, then they can listen to me and realize we are willing for compromise, so it's probably the best fit for them to think I'm the best candidate.
Great, yeah. Well, looks like a conservative with a lot of classic conservative ideas, and excited to see what you do in this debate.
Thank you.
Should be fun.
All right, so next up, looking at the Democratic side, Luca Lafata Hornillos, a man that was interested in doing the presidential debate truly even in the last semester, in the last year. He has been preparing this, but the only thing here, he's still struggling in the polls, still 4th here among Democrats in our recent polls. We'll see how he can maybe bring himself back into more voters.
So first I want to ask, I guess, going with what Jaden was saying, you're not struggling so far behind. There are candidates that are behind you, but what are you going to do? Why do you think that the polls are running so low for you, and what is your campaign going to do to really pull through and pull ahead?
So far, just general voter outreach. We've done a few ads, we've done a few rallies, but just appealing to every single citizen who is allowed to vote. We just haven't gotten to it yet, but we're working on it certainly.
Okay, so I know you are one of the candidates that's more vocal about what their specific plans are to solve the issues they care most about. So what are your main things that you want to stress in this debate and get people to know about you by the end of the debate?
Really, I want to answer the questions correctly, but also my main topics would be climate change, gun control, and civil rights. Those are the topics that I want to stress the most.
Okay, so what do you think? What have you put your most into? I know you said you're struggling a little bit with voter outreach, but so what has been your main focus in this campaign?
Just plans. Everyone always talks about what they're going to do, but my campaign has been heavily focused on how we're going to do it. And I really feel like once we start sharing that with the voters, they will understand that our plan is very fleshed out and will work for them.
All right, Luca Lafata Hornillos, a candidate who's really thinking that their plan is going to really help them throughout this campaign. Sounds like you're going to have a big shock value at some point, and we're maybe going to see more in the polls from you later in this campaign. So it'll be good to see what you're going to do today.
All right, yeah, thank you.
So speaking of shock value here, I mean, talk about the Men Win campaign. A lot of great ads, a lot of big and boisterous opportunities, both on his Twitter as well as Instagram page. We'll see his representative here real quick, Sam Dowd. Of course, men leading in the polls by far amongst Republicans, 71% of the vote. But the biggest question here today is how can they get those moderates to maybe move over to the Republican side?
Yeah, so maybe touching off of that, that is going to be the biggest challenge for your campaign is you've got the Republican votes, but what is your plan for maybe flipping some of those Democratic votes as well?
Well, I would say that a lot of them are, already in support of us. You pick a candidate, maybe it's your friend, and just because they're a Democrat, you go to that side. But I'd say that a lot of people still have been supporting men through this whole campaign and have just been voting with their friend.
That makes sense. Personal connections can carry a lot of weight in politics. So what part of your campaign are you allocating most of your resources towards? So rallies and whatnot?
Oh, I'd say, yeah, probably rallies. We've done quite a few of them so far. I think you were actually at one of them that went pretty well. So, yeah, we're going to continue on that road and see how far it takes us.
Definitely. Well, that's good to hear. Best of luck to you and the Men campaign. Should be a lot of fun to see.
Thank
you. How it goes, yeah.
All right, so of course a really tight race here for the Democrats looking on their side. They really have 4 contenders still here going into this primary debate. Tied at second here is the Chandler Meeks campaign. Chandler, of course, a varsity basketball player here at Westside. A lot of votes, a lot of different awnings, and a lot of different people that have a lot of interest in him. Here today for him is going to be Kaylee Harbin, his representative here today. And Kaylee's going to talk about a little bit of how this Chandler Meeks campaign can really pull ahead.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think going with what Jaden just said, what are your plans for really beating out Preister? And also, you've got the Waukee Stacy campaign that you're competing with. You guys are rating almost the exact same at the polls. So what are you going to do to pull ahead?
I think we just need to get more voter outreach. And recently, when we've been doing a lot of rallies, we recently had one in Iowa and one in New Jersey this past week. So I think focusing more on those and a lot of social media marketing, and I think that will really help us.
Okay, so talking with your candidate, a lot of things that he's concerned about is gun control and criminal justice reform. Does he have any specific plans for what he's going to do to help with police and criminal justice reform?
Yeah, we're really focusing on getting more of a comfort and understanding between police and just citizens. And so one of our plans to do that is have less if you're responding to a non-violent call, you wouldn't have a armed police. And for gun control, we're really focusing on having just stricter gun laws and having more tests and stuff when you.
All right. Looks like a candidate who's my producer's telling me to wrap up here. So looks like a candidate who's really looking to further his campaign through the use of social media and voter outreach, and really cares about social justice reform and police reform. Excited to see what he does today.
Thank you.
So next up here for the Republicans, we're going to see Nick Lunger, see how he can possibly get back in this race. It is really a one-sided race on the Republican side for Min Win.
So you are down in the polls right now, but what are the big three topics that you want to push on this debate that maybe can draw some voters towards your base?
You know, my top three main topics, first off, we have immigration. I believe in immigration laws and immigration reforms that address the needs of our national security. Economic policies, I believe that every American deserves the right to own, invest, build, and prosper. And civil rights, I believe that everyone is equal and nobody should ever feel alone, hated, or out of place.
Great, some strong takes there. So how would you describe yourself as a candidate, your personality?
You know, I would just describe myself, you know, to do hardworking. My whole campaign runs on leadership and change. My campaign has been about respecting everyone, every American. You know, being outnumbered with the Democrats, it's important that I take a look at everything as a whole and to respect everyone. So hopefully that will help take me a long way in the election.
Great, well, best of luck.
Thank you.
Great interview, yeah.
All right, so next up here, looking at the Democratic side once again, Gabe Barros currently in last place amongst Democrats in our recent polls. Sonny Heiner is going to be our representative here today for Gabe. But biggest question here, how can Gabe come all the way back, especially when so little time is left?
Yeah, I think I'm going to pose that question to you. What's going to make the Barros campaign go from that three voter prediction to ending up winning the White House? Do you think this could turn into an Aiden Carp situation, or how's your candidate's morale? Does he think that he's going to have to drop out here, or what's the plan?
No, I don't think Gabe is worried in the slightest. We actually know Aiden Carp pretty well, the past president, and like was said before, he actually was in last place before, just as Gabe is right now. And I believe the only reason Gabe's in last place is because people don't know his policies right now. I think his policies cater to every American, Democrat or Republican, and so I think that he's going to have no problem doing what he needs to do to win.
So can you talk a little bit about how is he going to get these policies out there? You said that's his biggest thing he's lacking in. So what's he going to do to, whether it's in the debate today or on the campaign trail, what's he going to do to really get people to know who he is and what he's about?
Yeah, no, I think he's really going to show in the debate today. He's going to get his points across, and I believe that's what's going to get people to vote for him and get behind him, is because when they understand his policies, that his policies are for the people of America, that they are going to get behind him. I believe that right now we've only made about one ad, which we're going to play later, and hopefully everyone enjoys it. But it's going to show a big belief of his, which is free healthcare for everyone, which pleases every American. So, no, I believe that Gabe's going to be fine, and that all we need to do is get his beliefs out. And so, yeah.
All right, looks like a candidate who's not going to let the polls stop him from running, not planning on dropping out anytime soon. It'll be interesting to see what Gabe pulls out today, both in his ads and on the campaign trail.
All right, so next we're going to talk about voter registration as a whole to get a lot of people out there. It's a big question here for the Republicans. Going to talk with the Republican National Chair, Lucas Sokolik, of how they get Republicans to the polls.
Well, Lucas, welcome to the show. Who seems to be the strongest candidate in your opinion right now?
Okay, so obviously Min is doing well in the polls. We can all acknowledge that. And what Min has going for him is he's got a base level of popularity among both the base and other people. I think what Min doesn't have going for him is I'm really skeptical if certain independent voters and moderate voters will vote for him in the general. And then on the other candidates, Elizabeth and Nicholas, they're both have really strong views. I don't want to say that they're more moderate than Min, because I don't think that would be true. I think they could potentially do better in a general, possibly. I'm not sure though. They haven't been extremely popular with the base. I think they all have upsides and downsides, and I'm really looking to see how today's debate goes, because at the end we need somebody who can speak publicly, somebody who can be assertive, and somebody who can really be confident about their opinions.
Great, thank you.
All right, so looking at the Democratic side, a lot of voters here on the Democratic side, just under 70% total of Democrats in our recent polls are looking to vote Democrat. Now going to look at our Democratic National Chair, Aiden Upton.
All right, Aiden, I guess the main thing I'm wondering is who do you think is, our polls are showing Pricers in the lead, and I was wondering if you think two things. One, who has the best chance of securing a Democrat in the White House? I don't know if overall it's more important for a Democrat for you than a specific person, but also who do you align with most politically, and is that a conflicting question? Are there different people, or is the person you want to win also who you think has the most potential?
I really do believe that Cade Preister and Jimmy Waukee Stacy have been doing a really great job about campaigning. I do, however, feel that any single candidate we have is going to be a good one. A lot of them are holding their values pretty well. I'm just a little concerned for some of them about their outreach and just making sure they can really get that out there. I think once we do that, we can really start getting rolling. But we have a lot of really great candidates we can choose from right there.
All right, looking forward to what the Democrats do.
All right, so that's going to end our tonight's WNN Pre-Debate Show. When we come back, we'll get into the debate here today. We'll start off with the Democrats. Then our next mod, we'll see the Republicans. A lot of big options, a lot of things to talk about here today. We'll be right back here on WNN.
And I'd like to thank you all for being here. I know we have a crowd that is anticipating to hear from you guys and what your opinions are. We are going to start with opening statements. So what I'd like to do, we'll start over here on my left, your right, and we'll work across. I just want you to announce to everyone your name, where you're from, what state you're from, and why you should be the nominee for the Democratic Party for President of the United States. Doesn't sound like
Okay, so I can't turn the microphone. But other than that, my number one issue is equality. I believe in this country, there's a lot of discrimination, a lot of inequality, and I believe most of that comes from the system that we're all in, specifically our economic system. I think the only real way to have true equality is for everyone to make the same amount of money. And that's a pretty radical idea, but there's a lot of really good reasons behind it and a lot of really good outcomes that will come out of it.
And that's Carter Hogan, is that correct? From
New Jersey.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hello, I am Luca Lofato Eneos from the great state of Missouri, and I believe that I should be the nominee for the Democratic Party because not only do I have the best ideas, but I believe that I have the best plans for those ideas and for you.
All right, thank you very much.
I am Jimmy Stacy from the great state of Iowa. I believe that America wants and needs change, and I think that America deserves change. We have fallen behind in the 21st century due to threats from countries like Iran, North Korea, and Russia. And we've also fallen behind in our lack of equality. So I believe that we need change in this country in order to move forward.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Jaden Taylor. I'm from the great state of Texas. And I believe in a very strong education system, and as well as making sure to reduce carbon emissions and help with climate change.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Taylor Meeks. I'm from Pennsylvania. One of our main problems is gun control. What I would do to change that is going along with things to make our country a lot safer. Also, I am pro-choice for women reproduction, so the women can have the choice that they need with the responsibility of the law.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Gabe Barros. I'm from Washington, and if we can be honest up here, our country is not in a good place right now. And I think that now more than ever, we need a president who understands the issues that face Americans today, and I have a clear view on how to fix some of these issues. Every issue has two viewpoints, and just the fact that everyone has a different opinion on each issue shows that there is merit to both sides of every viewpoint. And I think a great president should understand this and not prioritize one side or the other, but prioritize the will of the American people. And I'm that president.
Okay, thank you so much. With that being said, Mr. Faros, I think we'll start with you. Recently, former President Trump nominated a Supreme Court justice. Towards the end of his term, Barack Obama had tried to do the same. There's also been a lot of talk recently about whether there's a need for more justices on the court. My question to you is, has the Supreme Court become too political? And if so, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I believe that it has, and I believe that the people should be responsible for electing the Supreme Court justices directly. It seems a lot more fair than the president being able to just appoint someone who would want to support them in everything they do. But I don't really think that is the number one issue. I think that the number one issue with the Supreme Court system is that Supreme Court justices, currently there's no term limit for a term that they can serve. I think that for a position that is just as, if not more important than the president, there should be term limits.
Thank you very much. We'll go here to the center. Mr. Watkey Stacy, you just heard one of your opponents here propose 2 congressional amendments to give term limits to Supreme Court justices as well as to make them popularly elected. Are you in favor of such radical changes?
I would be hesitant to change our system too much. I think that our system itself could work really well if we hold our elected officials accountable. I think that starts with us. And what I would do is if there was a new open seat on the Supreme Court, I would move to nominate a more moderate voice, because that change starts with us. I don't think that the solution is to keep putting super progressive or super far left or far right people on the Supreme Court, because that's just going to lead to more polarization.
Mr. Preister, your views on the Supreme Court, please.
I think that there definitely should be an unbiased person. It should be the most unbiased branch of government that we have, because I think everyone has a right to a fair trial. And I can't say that I wouldn't nominate someone with similar views to me, but I think that I definitely try to give someone more moderate, besides maybe certain views like abortion or like things like that I find very.
Okay, thank you very much. You mentioned in your opening statement, Mr. Preister, that you care about the environment. We assume that's going to be an expensive undertaking. The United States deficit has grown to $23 trillion. Is that a problem? And if so, what's your plan to fix it?
I think that is definitely a very big problem, but I think that with the I want to legalize the recreational use of marijuana, and I think if we can regulate and tax this drug, it'll lead to an economic boom that we can further use to put towards that debt and better our country.
Very good. Does anybody else think they have a better plan to deal with the deficit than selling marijuana? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so my system, again, everyone making equal pay, would completely eliminate classism as we know it, essentially, and those billionaires at the very top, like the taxes that the U.S. would be generating off that, and their businesses would go a super long way to helping out with it. So.
Mr. Hogan, are you advocating for a revolution?
In a sense, it's less of it's more of a revolution of thinking, honestly. Like, we're not actually overthrowing our government or changing it in any way, but like as the people of the United States, we have to be open to change, and sometimes that change has to be radical.
Can you lay out your plan for all of us of how you're going to make sure that everyone makes the same amount of money?
Yeah, so essentially, so a big part of this system actually works based on our education. We have to have a huge educational reform. It has to be completely with the main goal of focusing on getting people to go down whatever job or career that they are passionate about and like the most. And then from there, all of the income that their jobs would generate would then go to the government, which would then be split and distributed to the people.
Thank you very much. Luca, are you in favor of this plan?
I am not, simply because I believe that capitalism works when we make it work. See, there are two extremes. There's a place on the spectrum where everyone makes the same amount of money, no matter what job you do, and everyone just lives the same. But then there's also another side of the spectrum where rampant wealth and monopolies and business practices lead to exorbitant and astronomical bank account numbers that aren't sustainable for the average citizen. So there needs to be a balance, and I believe the way that we do that is by making the billionaire class and the 1%, if you will, pay their fair share of taxes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Meeks, I'd like to know your opinion here on the economy, deficit, equal pay, and the like.
For me, equal pay has been a problem in American society. I believe that taxes do play a part in it. I apologize. For me, I would kind of want taxes to be equal in the way the class is. Not necessarily that all taxes have to be equal, but just saying that everybody is paying a fair share. So to go along with that, you will help the American economy, and the budget and everything can be split in many different ways that America is needed to help them. So the taxes are really just my main thing about it, and just making sure that America can get out of debt, but also just everybody's getting a fair share.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Yes, can I ask Taylor a question?
Go ahead.
Do you really think that the rich shouldn't pay more taxes if you do believe in capitalism? You don't think they should pay more?
To go with what you said, I'm not saying that they should pay more or shouldn't. I'm just saying that they should pay their equal share. When it's looking at now, they aren't. Sorry for that, they aren't. But the way it's looking at, we need to be more upgraded, and also just so that they're paying their equal share. Not saying that they need to pay more.
Thank you very much. I'm going to stick with you here, Mr. Meeks. You mentioned some things about healthcare in your opening statement. Health has been at the forefront of politics the last couple of years. Republicans have made several claims that Democrats, in their attempts to combat the health crisis, have put an undue strain on the American economy. What would be your plan in dealing with the COVID-19 crisis while keeping your eye on the American economy?
With COVID-19, I would say now today that we have made a progression. But for me, I would like to keep it more secretive, not really secretive, but just saying that the American people should have the right to decide. Asking, I would like to quarantine, be more cautious to the elderly people, and give the younger generation a lot more education that they need. So today, I really feel like COVID has been a progression of American society, but there's still work to do. And with me, I would take my laws and everything seriously to help us where we need.
Before we head to commercial break here, I'll give you the last word, Jimmy. What's your ideas on COVID-19, health, and the economy?
So a big problem with our health system is that it doesn't work for all people and that there's a lot of misinformation. So I think that building that trust back with the government is really important because right now half of America doesn't trust the CDC. And I think that's a problem. And that's partially the fault of politicians. It's also partially the fault of the CDC. They don't have consistent messaging. They backtrack sometimes. And I think that needs to be more consistent. And the way we do that is through making sure that people empower the CDC have the best interests of people in mind and aren't politicized figures.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we are going to head to commercial and see some wonderful messages from our sponsors and maybe even some candidates.
This
What's up, America? My name's Gabe.
Aren't you Gabe Miles?
Yeah.
Aren't you running for president? Here, take my baby.
Sure. Anyway, did you know that it costs around $5,000 and $11,000 in medical bills just for a woman to give birth to her child? This is a problem that we only face in America because we are the only first world country that does not provide universal health care for all its citizens. If I'm elected as your president, I will make sure that every man, woman, and child gets the health care that they need, regardless of their economic status. If this random stranger can trust me with their child, then you can trust me with the children of America. Vote Barnes, because a vote for me is a vote for you.
river is running, the birds are chirping, and the sun is shining. But not for long. The world is dying at an astounding rate. Do you want those chirping birds to die? Or what about the trees? If they die, we all die. You, your family, your manland, John Stamos? You really want to kill John Stamos? Unless you want John Stamos' blood in your hands, vote Chrysler for progress.
Okay, welcome back to debate. I would like to remind all of the candidates, we do have some among us that are hard of hearing, so do your best to project into your microphone so that we can all hear you. Mr. Preissler, with your campaign being accused of sending out doomsday messages about the destruction of the world and mankind, do you think you're really the right guy that can work across the aisle, that can work with Republicans and Democrats?
Yes, I think that my campaign, when it comes to their morals and their views, I think we are the most diverse when it comes to that area. I think that I can definitely work behind wanting more states' rights and things like that for Republicans. And I also do agree that the doomsday threats were an exaggeration. They will not actually happen for a long time, but we need to do something quick. That's what we do.
Mr. Luca,
Can I respond to that?
yeah, please.
Okay, I do believe in your policies and I believe in your plans. I thank you for recognizing the danger of climate change. But the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, that it's not that far off. Our world is dying, and we have been told by the United Nations that 2030 is the cutoff. We have 10 years to do what we can as a world and as Americans to stop the rampant spread of climate change and its effects on the world. And if we do not do anything to stop it, there will be catastrophic effects in everyday life for all of our children, our grandchildren, and even ourselves when we live to see that dark day. We need to make change, and we need to make it now because time is running out.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barros, do you agree with this? Change now, imminent destruction, 2030?
Yeah, I think that, no one really wants the world to burn up. And the main reason that we're using oil a lot and a lot of energy sources that use CO2 is, it's good for the economy. It's a big part of the American economy. But I really think that no one's going to care about the economy when the world is on fire. So I think that switching to renewable energy is very important, but there's kind of a right way and a wrong way to do it. What I want to do is that I want to take the people who are currently working on, like the coal mines and the oil rigs, and I want to kind of train them in the ways of renewable energy and kind of make a gradual transition. And that way, instead of just like shutting all of them down, if you do that, you're going to leave a lot of people out of jobs. And this kind of alternative way, I feel like it subverts that.
Okay, would you like to join in on this conversation, Mr. Meeks?
Okay. To go along with what he said, I believe that America should turn to renewable energy. I apologize. Return to renewable energy a lot sooner, so we don't have to make it to 2030 to see what will happen. We're going along with what he said about how a lot of Americans will lose jobs. I think we can turn them into finding new jobs about renewable energy and making that the most primary way that America gains their sources. Solar energy could also turn into America a lot greener, but just to keep the American economy safe and what it is now is something that we really should do soon.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to move on to some social issues here. As many of you have pointed out in your campaigns and your campaign commercials, and even here tonight, that's very important to you. Mr. Waukee Stacy, many Republicans are concerned that their religious liberties are being taken away in the name of LGBTQ plus rights. Specifically, some candidates have expressed the desire to take away religious institutions, churches and the like, their tax-exempt status if they don't provide gay marriage. Do you agree with this plan, or what is your take on this issue?
Churches having a tax-exempt status allows them to run as a business. That's the problem. The Catholic Church in the United States does not use that tax-exempt status to promote equality or to promote this godliness. It uses those tax-exempt status to make money. But I would be hesitant to impede on people's rights to their own religious liberty because that's what America's founded on. The only problem is my religious liberty allows me to live my life how I want to in the way I see God. I'm not a godless figure. I have my own spirituality. And that's what's great about the United States. We have the ability to have all of these different beliefs in the same country since there is no state religion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Preister, your thoughts on tax-exempt status for religious institutions?
I definitely think that I always struggled with the religious faith personally, just because of my mother being a part of the LGBTQ. But I also think that they definitely should. Every single person here should be able to have their rights heard and protected, or their voices heard and their rights protected, of course. And I definitely think that there should be little to no restriction on what they can do, as long as it doesn't infringe upon LGBTQ or other religions. I think that is perfect.
Thank you very much. Luca, do you want to get in on this?
I would, because I myself, as a Catholic, am aware of the stance that the church has and the stance that some of my counterparts within the church would have. But the fact is that these people were born this way, and to infringe upon their civil rights and their most sacred right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the name of religious liberty, I do not believe that that is religious liberty, to infringe upon someone else's civil rights and their ability to live their life the way that they were born and the way that they are meant to live their life. In terms of tax-exempt status, as you have mentioned, I believe that I do believe that institutions that violate civil rights of other human beings should not be tax-exempt. It's a problem, you know? The fact that people are treated differently and then they are afforded this ability to withhold costs. And Jimmy is right. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe in the Catholic Church and its mission, but only if it's carried out correctly. Often the American Catholic Church does not do that correctly.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've got time for one more question. Mr. Hogan, I feel like we've spent a lot of time on your economic policies for maybe good reason. But there's a lot of concern with foreign policy among the Democratic Party, especially since President Biden's recent evacuation of U.S. troops from Afghanistan. Do you believe that situation was handled correctly? And if not, how would you run your foreign policy differently than the current administration?
Yeah, I think the real problem with Afghanistan really comes down to all the conflict that's been going on there for how many years now. Something like that is bound to cause unrest in that area. You know, it's going to displace civilians. It's going to change how those people view America. It's going to change how we view them. I personally think that we should, as a country, strive to deal with that situation more peacefully than we have. I don't think we really need troops on the ground in Afghanistan to solve all the issues there. I think we do it through more peaceful measures.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'd like to now move on because of time constraints to closing statements. We will go ahead and start from the left and work to the right. So, Mr. Hogan, could you please give me your closing statement reminding these people why you are the person for the job, the Democratic presidential nomination?
Yeah, it comes down to this. I respect all these people up here, but when it comes to making this country better, there's no one that is going to be more progressive for radical change than I am. And for me to get this country back on the path that we want it to, we need radical change.
Okay.
I believe that I should be the nominee for the Democratic Party for President of the United States because I am committed, I am determined, and most importantly, I am hopeful. Hopeful for this country, hopeful for all of you. I am hopeful that we can make change. I am hopeful that we can get things done together and make progress towards a better future.
Mr. Watkins Stacy.
Today we've seen a lot of fear mongering on this stage, and I believe that we need to have hope. I agree with Luke on that. I believe that I believe in America, and I believe in what we can do, and I believe in how we can adapt and overcome things. We've done it so many times before, and we can do it again. The climate crisis is coming, but I also think that that gives us the opportunity to create good and good-paying jobs, and it allows us to modernize our infrastructure and protect human rights.
Thank you very much, Mr. Preister.
I believe every single person in this room has the right to be heard, and no matter who you are or what your social status is, I'll make sure to protect you and your rights. I will also make sure to make the Baja Blast cause federal and vote for progress.
Mace.
I believe that I should be the Democratic nominee because I'm here for the people. All of you guys in here have been going through something, or in the near future will be going through something. But it'll be my power to change that and make sure your life is as safely, as clean air, as safe as possible. So if you were to vote me to be the Democratic nominee, all of your life worries will be kind of handled and also be in a safe place.
And finally, Mr. Barros.
I think that I'm the most qualified person on this stage because I understand the main issues that greatly affect most Americans, and I have a clear view on how to fix some of these things. I believe that for a long time, the wealthy have kind of dominated and have been taking power away from the working class. And if I'm elected president, my America will be one where the focus is no longer on the individual person, but on the collective prosperity of the people as a whole.
All right, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. Could we please give them a round of applause?
You guys can do your customary shaking of hands and all that stuff. So, all right. To switch now to the Republican candidates. So if I can get the Republican candidates and your RNC chair backstage here. Get papers. Playing before. Backstage over here. got quite a great debate ahead of us. We've got 4 very fine candidates, and this is an extremely important debate because as great as those people who were just debating were, they don't represent all of us. At least 30% or more, if you count independents of us, are not going to tolerate for all of these policies. And that's why it's extremely important that we all unite under a unified opposition, and we respect each other, we work together, and we let the best candidate win, and when that candidate wins, we support them. And I am very honored to introduce the candidates. We've got Thomas Page, we got Nick Lunger, we got Minwin, and we got Elizabeth Matz. All of these candidates will make fine presidents of the United States. Let the best candidate win.
I would like to welcome you all to the presidential debate. Thank you so much for being here. We'll start off with opening statements. We'll start here on the left and we'll move over to the center. Please let me know your name, what state you're from, and why you should be the Republican nominee for President of the United States.
I'm Elizabeth Matz, I'm from Iowa, and I have strong beliefs in the laissez-faire style of government, and I want to protect our Second Amendment, and I think we need to make compromises through abortion. I think I'm the best candidate because of my unbiased opinions. I was the first female president, and I'm willing for compromise.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Jaden Taylor, and I'm a Republican from the great state of Michigan. I'm here today to talk to you about why I think I'm the most fit to be president. A lot of candidates up here will say that they care about climate change or gun control or abortion rights. Well, of course I do care about all of those things and each and every one of them, but most importantly, I am here to make sure you all know that the stance I'm running on is unity. I think we need a united country, both Democrats and Republicans, to accomplish the things we want in this country.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Nicholas Lunger, and I'm a Republican from California, and I just want Americans to have open ears and to not focus on who or what is up here, but to focus on why we're up here and the change and the promises that we are all promoting. Voting for a candidate because you believe they'll bring change is what's most important, and you should be about who you feel most comfortable running this country. And you also won't be able to bribe me to potentially change my views like this campaign has been caught up in.
Crowd, I'd like to remind the crowd to please be quiet. Mr. Payton, next up, please.
Hello, I'm Thomas Payton, and I'm running for a Republican office, and I am from the good state of California as well. And I am going to change the world. And what I ask is that you join me in my campaign.
Thank you very much, men and women. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Lunger. You stated that you have some problems with the WIN campaign. Would you like to kind of air that out of what your problems are?
Well, there's a couple. Mitt has already been sexist towards other presidential candidates and has on multiple occasions lied towards the media, like he did last week, saying that Lucas, who is our national Republican chair, sided with him on anti-mask laws, and Lucas later clarified he was just shaking his hand, and that just is false media, and his whole campaign has just been kind of scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal.
Mr. Wynn. Go ahead, Mr. Wynn, response, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what really happened. 2 weeks ago, my campaign and I were approached by a super PAC that we knew came from the Democratic Party. Now, just because they were Democrats does not mean we would immediately dismiss their concerns. As them being Americans, we would listen intently and attempt to understand the position. They came to us with a proposed amendment to the Constitution that would essentially heavily restrict or eliminate the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. Now, in communication with this group, we requested two things. One, draft of said bill to the Constitution, because first of all, we needed to understand what we were talking about and agreeing about. And secondly, we needed to know where their money was coming from and how much it was. We have heard speculation that it would be close to $1 million. So with that being said, after neither of those conditions were met, they did not provide a draft of said bill, nor did they provide further information on how much money, where the money was going to come from. We immediately stopped communications with that group, reported them to the FEC, and turned down the $1 million, and maintained our position that we believe in the right to bear arms and that our position could not be bought out.
All right, thank you very much. We'll get to you here on this, Ms. Matz, a little bit more specific on the issues. In light of several tragic events, such as the shootings of El Paso, Texas, and Ohio, many citizens have called for stricter gun regulations. Do you think that's the way to stop violence in this country, stricter gun regulations?
So I strongly believe in the Second Amendment. However, I'm willing to make a compromise by eliminating certain types of weapons that shoot multiple shots at once. So some of those, most of those shootings in the were with the weapons that shoot several shots at once, and I think there's honestly no need for that, and that is our biggest compromise I'm going to offer.
Go ahead.
Ms. Matz, you mentioned weapons that can shoot multiple rounds in a second, correct?
I just said in short period.
In short period of time. Could you please give me the classification or the actual name of these types of weapons that you're so knowledgeable?
I believe they're called
That could be true, but I personally believe they're automatic weapons.
Oh, semi-automatic weapons.
All right, thank you very much for that discussion. Mr. Payne, could you please round out this discussion on gun control? What are your opinions on gun control? Gun control, what are your opinions on gun control?
I feel like there are specific types of guns that we need to control, but I don't feel like having a handgun would have to be a violation of the Second Amendment. I still do believe that we need to be able to have arms in case we do need to rise up against the government. Because that is something that the founding fathers did predict may happen, and that is why we had it in the right to bear arms. Because without the right to bear arms, we would have never had the American Revolution, and we would not be a country.
Okay, thank you very much. We all were here for the Democratic debate. We saw that they were the party of equal pay and dropping babies and selling marijuana. With those things in mind, would all of you agree to support the other candidate that wins this election? Are there any of you that would not necessarily support the Republican nominee if you were to lose? By show of hands? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Matz.
One thing I don't support with Min's campaign is I don't believe you are pro-vaccination, am I right?
Can I respond?
Go ahead.
And contrary to what some would believe, I am not anti-vax. In fact, I am pro-individual choice. If Americans want to get the vaccine, awesome. And if they do not, awesome. I will support Americans in either decision they make. Personally, I think COVID is too large and too important of an issue for me to dare think that I can push my beliefs and values upon the 330 Americans and their families here in this country.
Ms. Matz, what do you think about that?
Well, I've never heard you speak on your pro-individual choice. I didn't realize that's what you thought on it, because I heard when way back a couple months ago, people were trying to get you vaccinated, and you were putting a lot on the line just to be against it. And I just am asking you, how much are you going to put on the line until you need to get a vaccination?
Well, according according to the CDC, we only need 60 to 70% of the population to be vaccinated to achieve herd immunity. We will soon, if not already, hit those numbers. I don't believe that forcing or coercing our fellow Americans to receive the vaccination when we achieve our goals is a problem.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Mr. Pate.
So, are you okay with that 30% being at risk of death? Because people will die from COVID.
Just to be clear, Mr. Pate, are you proposing some sort of coercive action to compel Americans to get vaccinated?
No, I'm just asking any question.
Men, could you please answer this question?
Mr. Pate, can you repeat that question?
Will you be okay with those 30% of people who are not vaccinated being at risk of death from COVID?
So as we know, COVID is a highly politicized issue. I want every American to be well-read and knowledgeable about issues, to include COVID, and I want them to make sound decisions based on what their situations are and the needs of their families.
All right, let's move on to our next topic. Mr. Lunder. Many Republicans are concerned that their religious liberties are being taken away in the name of LGBTQ plus rights. Do you believe this is true, and how would you protect religious freedoms?
I have never been concerned about religious liberties or anything of that sort being taken away. The great thing about living in America is we have freedom, and that freedom goes a long way, which is why I think it's important to state that I would be an ally for LGBTQ plus rights, as well as continue my support for all religions. Running for president, it's important I share a balance with my views and policies, and I promise that I'll back and do that for all Americans, no matter what.
Go ahead.
I don't believe this is true. I think we need to make a bigger separation between the church and the states. Obviously, there are decisions made, like in the Bible and with churches, but I think we need to step aside from those decisions being political decisions.
Okay, can you give me any specific examples of how you would separate those?
Like gay rights. Like I think people feel, they definitely feel discriminated in the church, and like they can't be part of that. But with politics, they can definitely have a say, and they can definitely like get married, I believe. I think there just needs to be a fine line between the church and the state and politics.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Wynn, would you like to join in this conversation?
Myself personally, I try to be a devout Catholic. But with that being said, I think we most certainly can find a balance between religious liberties and LGBTQ rights. There are those, perhaps some here on the stage, who have a more extremist view that would like to see one group or the other group suppressed. I think the foundation of this country raised the idea of freedom, so I don't see why Americans shouldn't be free to worship what they choose or be with who they want.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Pate, let's move on to foreign policy. The countries of Iran, China, North Korea, and Russia have been very antagonistic and aggressive countries in their own regions, and in some cases even the United States. Do we need to be concerned with these countries? And furthermore, do you think that they are a threat to our national security?
I feel like a very big threat would be China because of the technology that they do possess that we may not know about. Russia, also another very big problem that we need to counter. And I do believe that, yeah, we should be afraid of these things.
Mr. Luncher, foreign policy thoughts?
Absolutely. We have to be concerned, but I believe in having friendly manners with those countries. We all need each other for trade and benefit each other well. We have a very strong military, and continuing to give support and allowing them the resources they need to protect this country is a priority.
Very good. Mr. Wynn, what are your thoughts on how to protect our country in foreign policy?
Whether it be China, Iran, Russia, or any other nation, I want what's best for America. And to achieve this, we must maintain a military presence in strategic areas around the globe to act as a quick reaction force to handle any action from any aggressor. I believe we must also become less dependent on unfriendly nations in regards to economics. We depend on Russia for our oil, Saudi Arabia as well, and China manufactures most of our consumer items here. So I believe we need to distance ourselves from any aggressive state and bring jobs back here and back home.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wynn, I'm going to stay with you here before we go to commercial break. Many have accused your campaign, as well as the entire Republican Party, of being unempathetic towards lower class, poverty, citizens who are struggling economically. Is that true? And if not, what's your goal to help out those who are struggling most in our country?
Most certainly that is not true. My grandfather came here as a refugee with his family and worked as a dishwasher and a taxi driver for most of his life. And I'm here because of his sacrifices and what him and my grandmother have done for this country. Now, coming from a very poor, low-class family, I am not too distant from the struggles of poor American families here. One of the issues I see in regards to this is the massive inequality of the way taxes are distributed across the nation. We have many large corporations, some of these being international corporations, that are outright evading taxation. They do this while the average American family like mine or like yours carry the burden of society upon their shoulders, and this is simply wrong. So it's one of my major goals to eliminate the loopholes in the U.S. tax code and further increase the penalties for tax evasion.
Okay, thank you very much. With that being said, we will go to our first commercial break.
This is what Chandler promises, but this is Chandler's meek attempt to deliver.
Okay, welcome back to the debates. Ms. Matz, I couldn't help but notice that you seemed a little uncomfortable during that last ad. Did that last ad, should that be the image of the Republican Party and how they are portraying the Democratic Party?
Wait, can you repeat that?
Do you think that making fun of him for not being able to dunk the basketball was a fair attack?
No, we all make mistakes. Obviously, he knew his goal was to fail. He's going to keep trying, but you let him learn.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Lunger, before commercial break, you heard Mr. Wynn talk about his plan for helping out the most impoverished Americans in this country. What's your plan to deal with poverty in the United States?
With taxes, or do you mean like tax?
That's up to you, sir, how you think we should deal with poverty in America.
So I just support, I don't think it's the government's job to redistribute wealth. They need to pass the law for people to live under, and as the tax code has been changed, as fine as it is, the tax code always needs revision as change comes, but I still support it being something beneficial for all Americans.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Pate, your thoughts on poverty in America?
Poverty, I do believe, is a big problem. I do believe some of it is from the national debt. And how I want to fix this is I want to involve Reaganomics back in our society more than it has been in the past couple of years. So I want to deregulate business so that we can trickle down all of the money from the higher. So what this is going to do is it's going to accumulate wealth at the bottom of our society. And it's going to allow us to build a better foundation for our children.
Mr. Wynn, is that right? Bringing Reaganomics back into focus, is that what's going to help our economy flourish?
In short, I favor less government government intervention in business. Now, I know you mentioned the budget. Is it all right if I speak upon the budget?
Talk about what you want.
So, as of right now, we can't continue spending money the way we do. The 2020 budget was $6.5 trillion, though the federal government only had $4.2 trillion. That's a $2.3 trillion deficit. That's $2.3 trillion that we simply don't have. To alleviate the debt, first and foremost, I would decriminalize victimless crimes such as the usage and possession of marijuana. Currently, we have over 200,000 Americans incarcerated in our prison system, and it costs us $40,000 to house and feed each of these inmates every single year. So if these nonviolent offenders were released immediately, we would free up $8 billion, and that's where I would start.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Matz, we have to ask you, whether it's with the Republican Party or the Democratic Party before, I can't help but notice the lack of female candidates willing to stand up in front of their peers. Number one, is that a problem? And number two, are you the person that can fix that?
So it's definitely an issue. I mean, even in the Democratic president debate, there was no females up here, and I'm one of the people standing up here as in the Republican Party, and it's also not a secret that typically there are more men that are Republicans. I mean, when we split the rooms 2 weeks ago, it was very obvious to tell. And I think if I am president, then people will want to vote for more women, and that will help increase women to run in the first place.
Thank you very much. Would the rest of you like to speak on equity among males and females in politics in 2021? Mr. Wynn.
Recently, within the last few days, I have introduced Claire Bonnet as my campaign analyst. I think she's and endorsed her as well for Congress. I think having a balance of men and women who both have different ideas into politics, and especially in my campaign, will only equate to great things.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Lunger, let's talk a little bit about Afghanistan. The evacuation of U.S. troops from Afghanistan by the Biden administration drew a lot of criticism from both parties. If you were president of the United States, would you still have troops in Afghanistan? And do you think the Biden administration failed in their attempt to withdraw troops?
So withdrawing was not a bad thing. The way it was done was they felt the need to leave in 20 minutes. Lots of equipment was left. They were having parades showing off everything that we left behind. If I was president, it would have been done in a decent and orderly manner. We've been there for 20 years. We gave that country support. We supplied firearms, ammunition, and many vehicles. It was time to probably leave, but not so quickly.
Mr. Bates, your thought on the Afghanistan withdrawal?
I don't believe that should have happened. I have a very dear friend of mine who was from Afghanistan at the time that thing was going on there. In fact, she actually is a victim of that war. And her friends were all blown up by landmines when she was a child. And I just remember the fear coming out of her eyes, coming out of her voice when she said these things. And when I think of that, I just can't think of withdrawing the only people who are saving her friends right now. I can't think about the terror, about the horror of leaving children to get blown up by landmines and raped and killed. That just doesn't make sense to me. So yes, if I were president, the troops would still be there and Afghanistan would be safe.
Mr. Wynn, I think from two of your opponents, we heard some dramatic differences in ideas about Afghanistan. Where do you stand on troops in Afghanistan?
There was an absolute failure of critical thinking in the last 6 months of our involvement in Afghanistan. We ended up leaving over $84 billion in military equipment to include 73,000 aircraft and over 600,000 rifles. These convoys that we're trying to restrict rifles here and there in the United States, but we gave over $500,000 to the Taliban. And that's not including the most important asset we left behind, which was we abandoned 200 American citizens and thousands of our Afghan interpreters who more likely than not, will be killed and their families will be put into slavery. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this will go down in history as the greatest military failure of all time. And guess what? No one in our government is being held accountable. No one has been relieved except a man named Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller, who went on YouTube and called for accountability of the failure in Afghanistan, and he was thrown in jail. Ladies and gentlemen, 13 sailors and Marines were killed during the embassy evacuation, and we can't let their deaths go unanswered.
Ms. Match, your thoughts on Afghanistan?
So if I was president, I would definitely listen more to my lieutenants. I would build strong relationships with our military and let them have the biggest say in these decisions because they are the ones that actually know what's going on down there. Biden made a huge mistake by leaving too quickly and not realizing how fast Taliban would come back. And overall, I agree with what Lynn said that this was one of our biggest failures.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wynn, getting local here for a second. Our school has been focusing this year on belonging and making sure that everyone feels like they belong. Do you think that Republicans struggle to feel belonging and fear speaking their beliefs in this school? Is that a problem, or do you think that both sides are welcome to speak their mind frequently here at Westside High School?
Well, I think by nature, Republicans being the minority have a certain subconscious pressure upon them to not speak their minds, to not go against the current. But I think as long as we have good leadership such as Lucas here, being the RNC and a strong candidate, that Republicans will be able to voice their opinions and work with Democrats.
Mr. Lunger, kind of piggybacking on that, the Democrats seem to have a lot of steam, they've got a lot of candidates. Can any of you beat one of those Democrats, and are you the person that can beat a Democrat in a general election?
I think so. I believe that everyone is equal. Nobody should ever be alone, hated, or out of place. And it is my goal to help unite everyone as a whole, for we are better together. And I promise to pave the way for a more united America to make everyone feel welcomed.
Mr. Pate, can you win a general election?
Yes, I can.
Can you tell me why?
I would not like to think of it as Democrat or Republican. I would want to think of it as idealist versus literalist. Idealist, who looks towards the future, who looks to open doors, who is the Democrat. And the literalist, who looks at what history has been and what it is now, and moves on those things to maintain the past. And I feel like I can bring the past into the future, and I can win an election against the Democrats.
Here you go. Ms. Matz, let's talk philosophy here for a second. Okay, in general, what role do you think the government should play in the lives of individual citizens?
I'm a strong believer that the government should not have much of a role in the lives of individuals unless they're endangering other people. Obviously, the country still needs laws, and that's where the government can come in place, but I think they need to back off, and that's why I'm such a strong believer in the auditorium government, too.
Mr. Wynn, same question.
I want limited government. This American government was established to uphold and protect the rights of the people, as stated in the Declaration of Independence and further enforced in the Constitution. The central government's design is one of preservation, and that's preservation of liberty. It was never designed to extend past that intention. Now, when governments attempt to flex their authority in matters that don't warrant their presence, they cause only further detriment to society and her people.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Like both of them said, I think that the government should have a role with as little as possible. The government's role is to not control how I think or how I do things. They have a role in providing a taxation system and providing the resources needed for our national security.
Thank you. And Mr. Pate.
No comment.
One more question before we move on to closing statements. The states of Colorado and Washington have recently legalized recreational marijuana, and the majority of the states in the United States have legalized marijuana for medical use. Would you support federal legalization of of marijuana for either or both medical or recreational use. Would anyone like to answer that question specifically? Mr. Wynn?
Like I've already touched upon this subject, I believe that we should legalize marijuana. And like I just said, we have over 200,000 Americans incarcerated in our prisons over drug-related crimes, each of which costs $40,000 every single year to house and feed. I don't believe it is right to incarcerate fellow Americans on the basis of victimless crimes. These are crimes that differ from something like homicide or armed robbery. No one has been hurt nor offended. So I think we should free these nonviolent offenders, and that would also save this government a lot of money.
Mr. Lunger?
I just have one word. Yes.
Okay. I think it's now time for closing statements. Ms. Matz, we will start with you. Let us know why you're the person people should vote for the Republican presidential nominee for President of the United States.
Yeah, so I think I'm the best candidate. I think you should vote for me because I'm in compromise, we unite, and I'm willing to educate people on that. I can be the first female president elected, and I'm an unbiased candidate overall.
Mr. Wynn?
Right now, in America, we see the elite political class running amok the nation. Both parties engage in activities that will only further their power and money. I want accountability in the people's government. Too often we hear our elected officials blame their Congress or their predecessor for their situations or their failures. Regardless of whatever cards I am dealt, as president, I will hold myself accountable for the nation, its actions, and most importantly, its failures.
Mr. Lunger?
I believe not only am I more qualified, but have what it takes. My whole campaign runs on leadership and change. My campaign has been about respecting American rights and giving every American a voice and someone they can rely and trust to run this country. I utilize being a Republican in this election as well, considering how outnumbered we are, but it is my goal to help my messages and views get across to every American and help further along my goal of being united. I promise a safe America where everyone will be safe, respected, and heard.
And finally, Mr. Lee.
I believe that I'm the only viable candidate because I'm the only one capable of fixing America's broken bank account.
All right, can we please give them all a round of applause?
Audience, we have about 4 or 5 minutes here. So, if you have not yet gone on and taken those 2 polls to tell us who you think won the debate and such, please do so now. You should have, listen. Look in your email, you should have an email from your teacher. Go ahead and take those 2 polls here, please.
to the WNN Post-Debate Show. We had two really good debates here tonight. Both the Democrats and the Republicans really went up against each other a little bit, especially more than last year. We really saw a lot of people last year kind of just repeat the same thing over and over again. And this year we have two really big sides that are also be able to have very definite platforms of what they want to look at. Joining us now is Luke Steiner, our Democratic analyst. And I mean, Luke, looking at this Democratic side, who do you think is going to be able to pull away?
I mean, I gotta be honest, I hate to go for the cliche and say Cade Preister, but to be honest, it's the crowd engagement is there for Cade. He's got a really strong ad campaign, really strong social media and a presence, and to be quite honest, that's everything in this election is what's your social media presence and what's your engagement with the crowd, and I think he really has all of that. So although the polls are saying that he's not the most knowledgeable, he is polled as the most likable. I don't know his policies, honestly, like not super solid all the time, but he's got the likability and he's got the support behind him. So I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
So definitely during the debate, I mean, we talked about, or really Luca talked about how committed he has been to this, and it's been very obvious of how committed he's been to this. He started off with some of this project before we even got into this unit overall. But with Luca, you know, he was shown as being the most knowledgeable overall among Democrats. But he's still very behind in the polls. You know, coming into today, he was fourth. Into today, currently, he's still ranging around third. What's going wrong for Luca?
You know, I think the main thing going on with Luca is like what they said, what he said in our pre-debate show. He's just not getting that crowd engagement. He's struggling with voter engagement. They haven't rallied much. There has been a lack of people getting engaged to vote with him, and I think that's just really something. Unlike Cade, they need that social media presence and to get that crowd engagement back.
So big thing here as well, I mean, overall with this Democratic group, I mean, you talk about Gabe Barros a little bit as well. I mean, we saw with Aiden Karff last year, he went from worst to first in a big way whatsoever. I really felt Gabe was able to present some of his biggest points. I really think his opening statement was his strongest of the entire night. How can Gabe make his presence known? I would agree. I think he did have one of the stronger, he had a lot of strong points compared to some of the other candidates. I think the main thing their campaign is going to have to do, I mean, this is the first ad or anything we've really seen from the Barros campaign. I think they have a Twitter account, but there's not really anything on there. There's just a lack of, like Luca, struggling with crowd engagement, voter engagement. And I think the response to his ad that he showed tonight was really positive, really amped people up. And I think continuing on that path is what's going to help get his policy, people willing to listen to his policies. And once they listen to his policies, they'll probably agree. And that's how he's going to be able to accumulate some votes. So Gabe definitely has grown himself a little bit, but still very behind the top two runners in Jimmy Bwaki, Stacy, Luca, as well as Cade Preister. But talk about the biggest drop here today. Chandler Meeks went from being a legitimate contender to be one of the top three to get to the primary, to get to the general election. He has dropped down to last place within our recent poll. He is least among most knowledgeable, least among most likely, and then least as well of a person that would win the debate. I mean, it was a really rough area for Chandler overall. It definitely looked like he did not quite have himself set up. A little bit of enunciation issues as well in today's debate. What went wrong? How can they refix this debate? Well, I mean, look, I don't know if it's the RNC's attack ad or, like you said, just the lack of consistency in his answers and also maybe lack of preparation. Like the polls say, there seems to be maybe less knowledgeable than the rest of the candidates. I think a lot of his support, to be quite honest, has been from that crowd engagement. I mean, like I've been saying this whole time, there's really two sides you can come from, being really knowledgeable or having that strong crowd engagement. And Chandler's really had that crowd engagement, but he's lacking the knowledgeability. And I think he needs to have stricter policies and know where he's going for the next debate to really have a presence there and have a chance. So, I mean, overall, looking at the just entirety of this class going forward, if we look closer to going to the general election, you really see there's a main three here for the Democrats, maybe truly a main one for the Republicans. But going into tonight, we had 70% on a recent poll are Democrats within this populace. We dropped it down a little bit to about 68% coming after this poll, but I mean, I think it's a big knowledgeable aspect that how much the Democrats outweigh the Republicans here. What is that going to do for this group? What is that going to do for the general election? What can this group improve upon, and how can they still stay in control?
Well, I mean, I don't really think we have a control issue here, to be quite honest, unless there's a candidate that's highly unfavorable from the Democrats. I think they have the election, the general election pretty well secured. I don't think we really have to worry about a Democrat being elected just because the numbers just aren't there and we don't seem to have a really unfavorable candidate for the Democrats, so I think we're pretty good on that. I mean, I can't speak for some of our lower ones, like if Barros was the candidate, would that make room for a Republican to be nominated? But to be quite honest, I think a lot of the Republicans, if Preister is our nominee, I think we would have a fairly good chance of securing the White House just because of that he's more moderate than some of the other candidates. I think LaFata is lacking that moderacy, as well as some of the other candidates. And so a candidate like Preister is going to be the one that really secures our vote for the White House.
All right, cool. Thank you so much, Luke. So next up, we'll bring in our Republican analyst, Will Christiansen. So it's going to be a big thing here for the Republicans. Min Win has just about essentially wrapped up already here in the primaries. So, Will, I mean, looking at Min overall, I mean, he's very harsh Republican in a lot of his aspects. There's a lot of questions tonight of some scandals that have been going on. We'll get into some more scandals here in a moment. You've already seen our Twitter page. There's a lot of news going around recently. But looking at Min, I mean, consistently 60 or 70% has won each of the different responses that we've seen in a recent poll. I mean, he's running away with this one. How can he keep up this momentum?
I think the biggest thing that's working for Min is his public appeal. He's bringing a lot of energy to his campaign, which I really like, and I think that's where he's getting a lot of voter attraction. So I think if he keeps up the energy and keeps on pushing out great content like he is with these 60-second videos that he's doing, which I think are super fun. It's a great idea to sort of build a personal connection with your candidates, which I think is very important. I think that he'll be able to keep the steam running. So he's doing a good job so far.
So overall, with the Republican side, I mean, the biggest question here, it's to a point wrapped up of who we're going to see for the primaries. It's going to be Min Win. How can Min get some kind of vote or voter presence once we get to the general election?
Well, I think when you get to the general election, it's always going to be the race to the middle. So when you're in that general election state, you should really focus on appealing to those more moderate voters that are maybe on the fence on whether or not they're going to vote blue or red. And I think Min knows this, and he'll do an excellent job of attracting those voters because I think he knows what they want to hear, and I think that aligns well with his policies.
So going back to scandals a little bit, there's been a lot of scandals. Recently, we've seen on WNN about some different Twitter pages. There's been some scandals about some different groups within the Democratic Party or different PACs within the Democratic parties trying to possibly bribe different groups or see different groups within the Republicans. Again, we do not have specific research or sources specifically on those. There's a lot of questions back and forth. Maybe those might be misconstrued a little bit. Those sources might be not as credible. Those information will get you out more on WNN later. But with all these scandals that are going back and around, there's so much bickering comparatively in the Republican primary than we saw in the Democrats. Is this an instance to where we really can't see the Republicans being able to find a true voice? I mean, are they going back and forth too much? Is this going to hurt this group?
I think there isn't really a bad candidate on that slate. So I think that the bickering and going back and forth is almost counterintuitive for their image, which their image is sort of there's a lot of value placed around their image in this election. So I think that my advice would be to those candidates to maybe step back and take a little bit and just, it's not worth it. I think it just detracts from your political stances, and I think it'd be more valuable for you to just focus on your own campaign and continue to do your thing. So.
All right, so final thing before we get into our political insider, Soren Shake, but biggest news that we've seen this entire day, I think we were surprised overall with this group. Thomas Pate was on that page, the stage here today. We want to repeat this all to you guys as well. Thomas Pate is not filed for candidacy going into this debate. He is still not filed for candidacy as we speak. So truthfully, he is not legally obliged to have even been up on that stage. There's a lot of questions of how did he be able to get onto this stage? Is there a little bit of discrepancies towards being able to get people up on this stage? I mean, truthfully, if Thomas is able to get on that stage, anybody could to a point, right? So is this a question more of Thomas's legitimacy or really the overall process as a whole?
I've known Thomas Pate for a while, and if there's one thing about Thomas is he's always going to be a wild card. So I think him just showing up unannounced is not that surprising to me. I was kind of expecting it, and honestly, I'm glad he did because he brought up some good points. He had some good talking points when he brought up Reaganomics. I was very impressed, and I don't know, it was kind of fun. It shakes things up, and we'll just see how he does. I don't know if he's planning on registering in the future, maybe after this debate. I don't know what his plans are, but I'd like to see him on a ticket just to see how he does.
It's really interesting going forward. If we wanted to talk about technicalities, right now he is not a candidate. He will not be a candidate as the filing date has passed. So I guess there's a lot of questions.
I don't know what he's doing, man.
I will admit this is really odd for me. This is really odd for I think a lot of us here. But I mean, I think there's a lot that's going to have to be talked about with some of the advisors, I guess, of this election, of how this is able to happen. Is Thomas going to still be able to be a part of this election? But I mean, whether he is or not, I mean, he was last in all the polls, and in every single poll that we had today. He was last in our poll last time. I mean, even if he somehow randomly is able to get into this, are we going to see another Aiden Carr from last year?
I don't know if TP is that guy. I love TP, but I struggle to see that. I feel like he would have to make some substantial gains in his campaign, starting by maybe making a Twitter. But, stranger things have happened, and TP is the man to do it if he is going to do it. So, we'll see how she goes.
All right, cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Will. All right, so next up, we're going to bring in our political insider, Soren Shake. I mean, you've been talking with a lot of candidates here so far this year. It's a lot of them back and forth. I think you got a little bit of some more information than a lot of us did. One thing I want to talk about, just looking at the Democratic side, that somewhat attack ad that we saw on Chandler Meeks here today. What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, so the attack ad on Chandler Meeks, I mean, when there's politics involved, there's usually going to be some tension. So I wasn't quite surprised by it. Going around thinking and talking to other political officers, whether that be Republican or Democrat, you can tell that there is some tension between every candidate, regardless of what class they side with. So to me, it wasn't too shocking, but it was quite the ad. I will give them that.
So kind of going with tension, I mean, I talked about this with a little bit earlier, a little bit with Luke as well. We saw a lot more, I personally believe that we saw a lot more tension and back and forth bickering between the Republicans rather than the Democrats. I think there was at least some kind of acknowledgement and commitment among the majority of the Democrats there. Of course, there's back and forth differences here and there. But the Republicans, I mean, there's a lot of back and forth. Thomas, sometimes calling out Min. A lot of people calling out Min right now, but he is still the leader. Of course, we started off that debate with Nick calling out Min in a big way about the different scandals that he's had. I mean, but this really hasn't affected Min's campaign. How hasn't it?
Well, like you touched upon, Nick his first statement, he called out Min. And then what was interesting to me is Min didn't necessarily respond to each scandal that Nick brought up. He only responded to one, if you do remember correctly. So to me, that's a little bit interesting, but I feel like everybody else has touched upon. Min has this great image going right now, and he's got great ads. He's got a great campaign for everybody to see, not so much behind the scenes, because not everybody knows what's going on behind the scenes. And like you said, we don't have the sources, we don't have the research done, But it is a little interesting that he didn't touch upon each scandal that Nick brought up.
So talking about the Republicans overall, I mean, Min, of course, is just continuing to widen the gap between his other candidates. You have Nicholas Lunger, currently in second, but only with 13% of the vote. Min currently with 77% of the vote. Elizabeth Matz lower there with about 8%, and then Thomas Pate with only 2 current votes. I guess I touched this earlier. Min definitely looks to be the main candidate right now. Are these scandals, is this bickering back and forth between his own party going to hurt him in the general election?
You know, honestly, I think it's almost kind of getting him more attention in a way, because some people say all press is good press. So the more attention that's being brought to Min, the more people that are going to look to Min. And that way he's racking in these votes because he's handling it in such a professional manner. And the way he talks, the way he walks, you can just tell he's confident. There's nothing that he says that you don't feel like the passion behind it. And that's really going to get the voters' engagement, because it sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And frankly, he does know what he's talking about, but he knows how to demonstrate that to other people. And like you said earlier, Thomas Pate, wild card. Nick is surprising. He made a surprising jump, in my opinion. I didn't think he would overtake Liz, but I also didn't really see anybody touching Min. I have had a chance to talk with both Min and Liz, and both of them are very almost separate, but like very similar in the same way, that you see Min is very confident with his ideas, and Liz is also confident, but I feel like she's more open to change. Like Min is like, it's my way or no way, and Liz is like, I have these opinions, but I'm willing to listen to other opinions.
So kind of with that, one thing that I think was across the board, being able to have both opinions, not usually a Republican stance, climate change. We saw about every single candidate, both Democratic and Republican, showing that something needed to be done about climate change and acknowledging that climate change was a thing. I mean, looking overall in our true Congress in the United States, as well as a lot of our true politics in the United States, I mean, this is not a normal case. We've seen about 20 to 30% of current senators don't believe climate change is even affecting the country or the world currently. But it seems to be a little bit different here. Does that open up some kind of cooperation? Is this a way to get Democrats and Republicans on the same page?
I feel like it's a start, you know? Like, I feel like being more open to sharing your ideas and listening to other people's ideas for any candidate is going to be very productive for them in the long run. Because if you show that you're willing to listen to others, it's going to engage the voters more, due to the fact that they kind of want a president who's going to listen to them, who's going to help their needs. So when you mention opening it up, I feel like it's like the tip of the iceberg. I feel like we still have a lot of work to go towards, but I feel like we do have some candidates on both sides that would be willing to meet the needs of both sides.
All right, so looking at the Democratic side, I mean, we talked about this earlier with Luke. I mean, biggest drop of the day by far was Chandler Meeks. I mean, he goes from being a legitimate contender to being one of the top 3. He was tied for second going into tonight, but then, I mean, it just seems that everything fell off the rails for this debate. What did Chandler do wrong? Was the attack ad that big of a presence?
You know, I don't think the attack ad did much. I feel like it was more kind of like not necessarily like an attack. I mean, it was an attack, but I don't feel like it was more personally Chandler. I think it was more of an attack on the Democrats. But what kind of sold me on not Chandler was the fact that when he was talking, he didn't sound confident. He didn't seem like what he was saying. It felt more scripted than it did like more from his heart. And I feel like if he wants to come back in this race, which he definitely could because he has the likability, and we saw that in the early polls, that Chandler could and very well might be a potential top candidate. So my issue with what Chandler did today was that his ideas, he shared his ideas, but he didn't share like a plan behind it. So there was kind of like some holes. He was like, this is what I believe, but he didn't give us a why I believe it or how I'm going to change it. So you just kind of got to get some congruency going behind his ideas, and I feel like he could get back in this race.
So final question here before we get into our graphic designer and another insider here, Ben Cutler. So quick thing, going forward, what do you feel is going to be the final 2 within this race, and who do you think is going to be able to pull ahead and become the next president of the United States?
So my final 2, if I had to make another prediction right now, would kind of be both the front runners of Luca and Min. And I feel like that debate would go very, very well, and it would be very close because they're both so knowledgeable and both they have like this persona behind them to which they can get the fan interactions. But Min might still have the fan likability more than Luca. Although Luca might have better ideas, I don't know if he can get the crowd going as much as Min can.
All right, cool. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Soren.
of course. Thank you
Make
for
sure
having
you
me.
guys can watch Soren Sits Down on Twitter. Be able to make sure, I think, about once or twice a week, be able to talk with a lot of our political advocates. So now we'll talk with our graphic designer here. Want to get a chance to come on the show, Ben Cutler. So Ben, looking here tonight, I mean, a really big debate back and forth. Who do you feel, Democrats or Republicans, you want to choose these two sides, which party do you feel felt the most confident and was the most prepared for this debate?
I think it simply comes down to entertainment. And I think that the whole crowd could agree, I think everyone here can agree, the Republican debate was more entertaining. I don't think it has to do anything with Bramley's questions. I think it has to do with crowd engagement. It has to do with the way the candidates answered the questions. And I think the Republican debate was simply a lot more entertaining. I think, obviously, everyone understands that Democrats are the majority in this class, but I think that entertainment factor, that class engagement factor, will, it's definitely setting it's a step in the right direction for those Republican candidates.
All right, so biggest thing overall here, I mean, kind of talk with Soren about this a little bit as well, but we'll go into here. What's your final two? Who do you think can take away this presidential election?
I'm going to go with the underdogs. I got to go Gabe Barrows. I think he had a very strong debate. I'm not familiar with the final poll results, but I assume that he's gaining some traction. I think if he continues with that confidence, continues with the beautiful ads, I think he'll definitely make his way past everyone. And for the Republican candidates, I know obviously he hasn't filed for candidacy yet, but it's got to be Thomas Paine. I think he'll find a way. I know obviously he wasn't supposed to be in this debate. He found his way into that. I think he'll find his way into filing for candidacy after. I know he obviously has connections. He's Thomas Paine. He knows everyone. But he'll find his way into the running, and he'll make a solid run for it.
So with Thomas here, if you really feel that this is the way that Thomas can go and be able to win this general election, if Thomas is able to win this, there's a lot of questions to where, is this election legitimate? Because truly, legally, Thomas is not able to be on this debate stage and truthfully not able to go forward because he still has not filed for candidacy nor put any of the time or effort into this. If Thomas ends up somehow winning this election, does the election board, does the entirety of this process come into question?
No.
How so?
And I think it's as simple as no. Thomas Paine is as legitimate as it gets. And I don't think that him finding his way into this run says anything about the legitimacy of this election. Thomas, he knows what he's doing. I think it's illegitimate. I don't think that there's anything scandalous about this. I mean, it's politics. Politics are politics. Like, we'll obviously, but we don't know the behind the currents of how he's making his way into this election, how he's going to file for candidacy several days after he's supposed to be filing for candidacy. But I don't think it speaks anything to the illegitimacy of this election.
So final question here before we end off this pre-debate show. I mean, talking about just some scandalous overall. I mean, the Min campaign has been rivaled with scandalous. We talked about this. They talked about it in the debate. With Thomas maybe gaining some traction, we haven't really seen these scandals really affect Min and his campaign and his poll numbers as much as most people would probably think. Are these scandals just out of the way for these two?
Not necessarily. But I think there's, like Soren had talked about before, I'm kind of with the all publicity is good publicity. And I think if Thomas's illegitimate entrance into this election gains the public eye, like if it gains the public eye, then that will be nothing but good for him in his running. I think that any publicity will be good for him. I think as you speak on Min, it's the same idea. All publicity is good publicity, whether it's a scandal or not. And I think that those scandals that gain a lot of publicity will play a huge role into the end results of this election.
All right, cool. Thank you so much, Ben. So that will end off our pre-debate show and our general primary debate here in the Westside Auditorium. Been two really good debates. Once again, I'm your host, Jaden Taylor. We'll be back once again in 2 weeks for the national convention here as well. We'll see some more poll results. Make sure to stay tuned on Twitter. WNN, the Warrior News Network, is the best place to see everything for this campaign. WNN coverage you can count on.